Hello, everyone. I'm Jesse Harper, and joining me this week is Noah Beygelman. Noah, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, you just got back from a recent trip to Yokohama, and you spent quite a bit of time out there. How long was your trip in total?
Close to 3 weeks. I think it was like 19 days.
Oh, geez. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of good eating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to think of the travel. We had travel difficulties on both ends. So really only about like 16 days of actual time there. But yeah, enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, I bet. So, memory serves, your Pro Tour run was a little rough. A little
I would
rough.
I would consider it a Pro Tour crawl, maybe. I wouldn't necessarily bump it up to a Pro Tour run.
Yeah, the horse failed you, I
Mhm.
heard. But you did play the calling the next day, and you completely changed decks to something I didn't expect you to play personally, being one of your locals, was Arachne Marionette. It's your deck of choice.
Yeah. I still felt like I had not achieved the success on Slip Through the Cracks that I wish I could have. I played Slip Through the Cracks back in the Pro Tour at Singapore, and that event, I felt like my Arachne itself play was actually really good. I just did bad in draft. I think from my own perspective, I should have probably been playing Marionette for longer. Like you said, I haven't been playing it at locals or anything, but after playing in that calling and playing it at a couple more like local events since I've been back home, it's been very enjoyable. And I think a lot of my misconceptions about how I thought the deck would be in a tournament setting were kind of wrong. So I I have some regret about not playing it in the main event, but what do you know? Victor just won the calling this past weekend. Clearly Victor is a also a good deck. It just can't
It
get
wasn't
back
a good
every.
deck for you that weekend.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not infinite events. Like I don't get to reload my save file and rerun the Pro Tour with Marionette. So
That is true. That is true. We do have a couple of events out here though from time to time, but we do have the exact list that you played in the calling. You want to go through it and give us a little bit of a rundown?
yeah. So I would say for the most part, when you look at building a Marionette deck, I think probably 75%, if not more, is pretty standard across all the decks. I would say like almost every card you see on the screen here is just what you play. Like it's kind of freeing having an equipment loadout that you run in almost every matchup. You're only ever changing the boots. I would say I probably play black techs in the majority of matchups and only really run the stalker steps into Acilio, maybe some like hard fatigue decks, but I also kind of like the paradigm of black techs being able to help me block out Command and Conquer, some other breakpoint, boulder drop, that kind of thing. So I find that I end up playing the black techs pretty often, and then yeah, the rest of the equipment is kind of just if you've been playing as Marionette or against Marionette, it's nothing earth shattering. But yeah, going down into the actual deck, yeah, like I said, top row, all staple cards in and every matchup. You can see there's 46 here as like a main deck. I am pretty sure none of these cards get changed based on the matchup. The only one would be that Plague Hive, a nice fable. I chose to play this instead of the Schism of Chaos because at the bottom it says Assassin, which means if you ever draw it in a situation where you don't actually want to pitch a card and you've transformed into one of the different Arachne forms, you can discard it to the form. That was my theory going into the tournament, at least. But when I was actually playing the games, I found that I was just trying to figure out a way of pitching the card every time, especially against opponents where all three would be relevant. I think 15 rounds of the tournament, I pitched this card maybe 18 or 19 times because there was a few games I went to second cycle and was able to pitch it multiple times. And I think in every single match, I also drew it. So sometimes the frailty lets you down, but I would say both of the other modes are extremely strong for what this deck is trying to do, given that both the inertia and the blood rot pox kind of function the same way, in that against the fatigue decks, they have to keep cards back to pay for a blood rot, meaning it's unlikely for them to be able to have an arsenal defense reaction to stop your 5 card hand. Similar with inertia, that one that just puts a hard stop on them having a 5 card hand. So yeah, if anybody has seen me play before, when I play with the Plague Hive, normally when I play my cards, I play them upside down so my opponent can read them. And the Plague Hive, goes in the pitch zone. But I feel like there's something demonic about putting your pitch zone upside down. So the the one exception I make with the Plague Hive because like it's an effect that's happening in the pitch. So I got to make sure my opponent's aware of their impending demise.
Yeah. So, what would you say the split was on useful modes versus non-useful modes across the event?
Mm, I think there was only twice when I rolled a mode that did nothing. It was into an Acilio and a Gravy where I rolled Frailty, and they had no arsenal, so and obviously they don't have a weapon that attacks, so I didn't get any value there. But yeah, one super high roll moment was against Kaiser of Team Blue Pitch on day one, where I had attacked with Clave, I think. I don't know. I attacked with one of the weapons with Go again, pitching the Plague Hive, hit the inertia in a situation where I knew that he had gone into Flash and Arsenal. And then I attacked with Persuasive Prognosis and had access to Stains of the Redback or Tarantula Toxin. I don't know. I had access to some reaction to push the Prognosis through a block. His hand was Blast to Oblivion, Mind Warp, Electromagnetic Somersault, and there was a Brilliance on the board as well. So being able to snipe the Somersault and high rolling the inertia off the Plague Hive essentially just like went +3 cards on the Plague Hive because now the hand was completely non-functional. Definitely some part of that is Prognosis, but like the Plague Hive delivering the finishing blow, the hammer from the top, putting him in the dirt. Yeah, it was definitely strong.
Yeah, I like to think that Assassin is probably one of the decks that is more indicative of like each card is greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing, where once you pair all these effects together is when you get the really powerful turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Plague Hive is like, if you think about the value it generates, it effectively lets you play like a 6-card hand because you're pitching a card, and that if that pitch card like does a card's worth of value, it's like you played a 6-card hand. Maybe that's copium, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're all about the copium and Fab, so don't let anybody tell you different.
Fair.
So anything out of the ordinary that you were running other than the Plague Hive? As we get into like the inventory here.
Yeah. So there's a couple cards here. So I was playing a few more traps than I think is normal. Not necessarily traps, but a few more defensive cards. I had one of each trap, the Den, Frailty, Inertia, Lair. We don't talk about Blood Rot Trap. This is just really nice toolbox with under the trapdoor, being able to get whatever trap you need. Oftentimes, I would just, every time I saw one of these traps, I would try to use it, not necessarily saving it up for something powerful, because arsenaling a trap and just like hoping that it gets live is a little bit suspect when you're playing a deck that uses Codex of Frailty or sometimes gets random draws off of Savor Bloodshed, etc. So yeah, I would typically just try to put them in the graveyard. There was actually a cool interaction that came up where a Marlin opponent played Burdens of the Past, and I was able to use my Under the Trapdoor, banish the trap from the graveyard, and then play it from the banish zone to kind of dodge the Burdens of the Past. That's cool. Not that I run any duplicates, but just in general being able to play out the trap in that situation was cool.
Yeah, it's funny because the Under the Trapdoor dodges quite a few effects in the game that turn off defense reactions. I know when I play Riptide and I have Dreadbore, I like to say no defense reactions from any zone, but I can't specifically say that into Assassin anymore because they can play D-Reacts from Banish now. So it's the one zone that like gets by Release Attention plus Dreadbore.
Yeah, it's definitely a super powerful thing you can do. Just having the blue where it can fuel your, like if your opponent decides not to play an attack react and you have a Under the Trapdoor, it's now just the blue that powers your turn. But then if you need to, hit the brakes and be more defensive, then it gets you probably the best defensive pieces that any class has access to in terms of like ceiling, I would say. Like the Frailty Trap can be worth so much against Warrior. The Inertia Trap hitting a whole D react can be like a 0 for 7 type card, right? And then just marking, it's hard to put a numerical value on the opponent being marked. Sometimes it's 1 million, sometimes it's 0.
Yeah, Assassin definitely likes that mark. Sometimes you could say, oh, well, I just need this to pressure the go again. Sometimes you're like, okay, I'll just put the Lair of the Spider out early, mark them, and then I can block with my hat on a later thing to turn into the thing I want going into my turn.
Yeah. And then, running the full 3 shelter, 3 sink. My idea was that there was going to be a lot of mirror matches. And I found that whoever can play most reactively, whether that's on offense, being the one with more attack reactions, or on defense, having the defense reactions to counter their attack reactions, I found that that's like a very effective strategy in the mirror match. So I wanted to come as prepared as possible and never let them free roll a leave no witness, for example, of just presenting that 4 at the end of the chain can be a bit problematic to deal with. In the other sense, me playing so many defense reactions, I think there was a lot of people on the tournament that were also trying to employ this strategy. And so the Command and Conquers went absolutely crazy for me the whole weekend. It's not a groundbreaking card of, wow, I played Command and Conquer in my Flesh and Blood deck. I would say 40% of my Command and Conquers actually destroyed the arsenal when it was a card that my opponent would not have preferred be destroyed. Not like some janky card they threw down there. Like they were really stressing about either they have no turn and they IP, or they just let this card die. And yeah, like I said, basically half the time my opponents are just going to let their arsenal die.
Yeah, sometimes the game is just who can cast Command and Conquer more times and move on with life, you know? I do see a one of Take Up the Mantle in here. That's kind of a card that's fallen out of favor since Slippy has gone away. So talk me through why you're playing a singleton copy of this card.
So yeah, I would say there are 3 cards that I would have changed had I been able to enter the tournament again. It's definitely this Take Up the Mantle. The only modes I used for this were it was a 3 block. It actually came up against Marlin where it was a 3 block reaction, so I could help block Overpower. But obviously I'm not going to put Take Up the Mantle in my deck for that purpose. Yeah, I think there's a build you can play of this deck where you play more for just a Nick, you play some more of the blue one power stealth attacks, and that's like helps your mantle where you can have like the super high roll. Given that I wasn't playing that many of the blue ones or just a Nick, I think the mantle was probably just misplaced, and I put it in as like a cheese factor, but ended up not really doing much for me on the weekend.
You said there were 3 cards that you were looking to change?
Yeah, the next one is the Infiltrate. I thought this would be like really good in the mirror match. I only drew it once. I played 3 mirror matches. I only drew it once. So I guess maybe it's a little bit results based of like, oh, I didn't draw it, so I can't really say how good it was. But there was a lot of situations where I thought about if a card in my hand would have been Infiltrate, would it have been really good? And I think because I was trying to cast Command and Conquer or cast Leave No Witness, and I found that these types of attacks where it was going to guarantee make my opponent give me cards to respect it, whereas Infiltrate, it's not always going to demand multiple cards. It'll only come in for 4 if I'm already marking them, but I have like Mark of the Black Widows, which are taxing my mark capabilities. So I think just having the 0 for 3 not being slipped through the cracks where I'm threatening to go again on this card, I just think it ends up not really being worth. If you had a 90 card deck, I'm sure you could probably play Infiltrate and like fix your deck more to make it good. But right now, I think I wouldn't play that going forward.
Yeah, I do also find myself really liking this card as far as assassin attacks go, and then every time it just doesn't really do what you want it to do, and then there's the crowd that's like, oh, well, you can play Tome of Pandemonium, and it's like, sure, but then what if you hit something you can't use? What if you hit something that's just not good value to use?
Yeah, I think it's just unnecessary voodoo. Like, there's already some dubious stuff going on with the mixture of cards that can only buff daggers, not actually playing enough blues to where you can consistently draw 1 blue per hand, and then having more of these attacks that don't have go again. I think is it's not good for a really long tournament because there just will be times where you draw these hands that don't function well together, and it loses you a round. And given that you don't really have rounds to give up for free because your deck drew bad, I think it's something you should avoid. And then yeah, Spreading Plague is the last one, where I would just cut that to 1. The 1 copy, I basically decided mid-tournament that I was just going to play 1. So I basically played with a 79-card deck. I was just siding 1 in whenever I thought the card was good. I thought I might want 2 because I was like, oh, what if I end up blocking with 1 early? They'll never expect the second one. Or if I end up casting 1, like maybe I want 2 of this effect to help me win in the end game. But it basically came down to the fact that this is something that being a yellow into these like fatigue decks is where this card would shine. Being a yellow, it's pretty easy to just pitch it. Those decks aren't really forcing you to block with cards on most turns. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about like the Pleiades hard fatigue, or like the Victor deck that doesn't try to play the game, the one that just plays a bunch of defensive cards, Goldmane Estates, Remembrances, and stuff, and isn't actually trying to like attack you on most turns. So I think this card is really strong, given that a lot of people will try to hold their equipment for blocking tall. So my vision for this card was like, I'm going to play Savor Bloodshed plus Cut from the Same Cloth. Maybe I'm good at the game and I put on a Kiss of Death, or I'll just play another pump and have it on Chelicera. And the idea is that the attack is so large, my opponent basically says, okay, screw it, I'm just going to put my whole hand down. And then giving them 3 to 4 Blood Rots is kind of just like a huge blowout. There's not really any other card that would deal the true damage that this card would deal in that use case if my opponent just laid down all their cards. As well as into like a Dynamo Warrior deck. If I was to attack with CNC, I found that a very common playline is they'll block like Dynamos plus one of their Temper 2 armor pieces, plus a card, and then just giving them 3 blood rods is kind of insane there.
That's kind of where I was thinking your head was at when I saw these 2 cards in the deck list, was just play it into the decks that are trying to fatigue you, go long, want to block a lot, and just get a bunch of extra value over the top and punish them more for committing cards. On that note, I believe your overall finish was 14th at the
Yeah,
call.
somewhere in the top 16, and it was a 2-digit number.
So we do have you here at 14th on Marionette at 11 wins. So this is going to tie into the other topic I wanted to discuss with you today, which is tournament structure in Fab, and positives and negatives, but also why it almost always consistently feels like at these like tier 3 and above tournaments we're always like missing a round, if that makes sense. It always feels like when you go and look at the top 8, you'll see a number. In this case, it's 11. And then you continue to scroll down, and 11 wins goes all the way to 17th place. So from 4th to 17th. In other games, tiebreakers are done off of like opponent win percentage and things like that. So if you've beaten better people across the course of the event, you tend to place better. And it doesn't necessarily go off the round number in which you took your most recent loss. So I think this might be a little bit of that policy kind of showing up a little bit, because if you go a record that's good enough to make top 8 and that record is good enough to be the 4th seed of the event, it feels a little bad when you are somewhere down here and you have the same record as, half the top 8.
Firstly, I want to say that I like this system, actually, where you know how your tournament is going to go. I don't think they should make any change that brings ambiguity and, like, you have to hope that your opponents win. Because I think that it's hard to rationalize after the tournament of why this happened. Whereas I can say immediately I knew where my placement was going to be based on the rounds that I lost. It's kind of like if you enter day 2 X2, the lot the die's been cast a bit there, where I lost my last round of Swiss on day 1. So I'm like, okay, I know that my day 2 is going to be really tough. Like, I have to really win the first 4, maybe the next 3, and then lose the 4th if I'm lucky, or just straight win out. But I think that there just needs to be something done in general with the number of rounds based on the size of the tournament not being so broad. Because if we look at the tournament from this past weekend, there was just one person who had a record that snuck in at 8th place. And I think that personally is like fine. I think it's okay if there's someone with a worse record, that like Michael Hamilton at Worlds in 2024 being the only X4 snuck in at 8th place to top 8. I think that that's fine. Where there's like, okay, you have what we would consider one win too few normally, but you're able to luck sack, you sneak in a top 8. That's cool. What's not cool is when you're getting 17th, like you said, and you have the same record as someone who got 4th. That to me shows that there needs to be either an extra round or one fewer round, or there just needs to be some sort of change. Yeah, you can see here where this one I think is much more easy to understand. Of okay, it was a 12-round event, I think, right?
I think so.
Yeah, 12
yes.
rounds. Yeah, so 12 rounds. You know that you have to go 10-2. One person will get lucky. That's good for them. Cool. They got the bump up. It's kind of like getting an up pair, down pair, whatever. Like one person will get lucky, but you know that in order to top this event, you have to be X2. When it's the other event of so many people at X3 will make it, or like imagine in this tournament, the people with 10 wins went down to like 9th place, for example. I know that's been the case at some tournaments like Raj at the Nationals that Jacob made the finals against Majin Bay. Raj had like the same record as everyone in top 8, but he was 9th. So I would say like to me the two things that should be changed. I have no solution. I don't work for LSS, but the two things that should be changed is like the feels bad of, oh, I got 9th or 10th despite having the same record as everyone in top 8, or the place like 4 through 17 is all the same record, and it's like a pretty big disparity. Imagine this was like a pro tour, right, where the disparity between making top 8 and top 16 is like multiple, or top 32, excuse me, in the case of getting 17th, is like multiple thousands of dollars. It's like kind of cheesy. Just, oh, I faced this I faced Gravy Bones in round 6 compared to the other guy faced it in round 10, and then therefore he gets multiple thousands of dollars. I don't know. It's kind of cheesy when you put it like that, right?
Sure, and I would like to say, for the viewers at home, this is not a "oh, my day didn't go well" kind of rant. This is actually more of a like, let's look at the tournament structure and see what's going on. Because for me, when I look at WoW, half the top 8 had the same record as the entire top 16 for the most part. It's just like, that's crazy that the only thing that really shifted was the rounds they took their losses, like you said, that gem lottery coming up, and this person might have found a bad matchup in round 10, right? Or in round 7 or 4 or wherever, what have you. And when it hits that second breaker, they're just like, nothing I can do about it. Yeah, maybe I should have played better, maybe I should have won that game, but maybe like that matchup's like a 20%er or something crazy, and it's not something that you were really prepared to fight against because it's off meta or whatever the reason may be. And then at the end of the day, you're like, wow, I did really good, but I didn't do the thing. And it's like almost like a jab in the ribs kind of.
Yeah, it's always weird for me, that feeling after getting a result where I have, similar record to the people who did make top, and I don't get to play in top cut. I usually don't actually feel that bad in those tournaments because it's like, I know that I performed well enough to make it. I just lost the wrong rounds, and I'm hopeful at the next tournament that I can do better. But I think the subsequent tournaments, if there was some sort of change and I didn't have to just be like, okay, well, I hope that my pairings allow me to do better, as opposed to I actually play better or play worse. I think, if they took it out of my hands, that would be cool. And they made it such that I could just continue to play at the same level, and the amount of rounds would allow for a much more clean cut. I think that would be nice.
Yeah, even at like local events, it feels almost like every time we have a PQ or an RTN or something that there's a bunch of people that just like, man, I wish I had like one more round to really try and diversify the top 8 from the rest of the field. So how often do you see 3-2 at 5 rounds at locals like make up essentially 4 through 16 or whatever, and then a bunch of people just going, man, if only I didn't lose round 1.
I think it's usually more of a feels bad actually for me when I lose like round 1 and then someone just 0-3s after, but like they brought a deck that's just, I'm speaking personally here. I'm not saying that LSS should do anything about this behavior, because it's perfectly valid. You can enter a tournament with whatever deck you want, but like you enter a tournament. Let's say you enter the tournament with Tekla, and it's like 50% of the room is marionette, and then the other 50% of the room is Guardian. Let's just, imagination land here.
Sure.
Nobody decided to bring a Celio. No one decided to bring anything else. It's only you on Tekla. Half the room's marionette, half the room is Guardian, and you just like showed up to flip coins and slap your wrist and see how it goes. And I happen to be the Guardian that pairs you round 1, and then somehow your brother is also at the tournament and you bamboozled him to play Teklo. I face your brother round 2. Okay, I'm 0-2, but I would have beat everybody else in the room, for example. I think it's usually those kind of situations where I face a deck that there's no way it's going to win the tournament, but I happen to play against it, and then I lost, and that happened to be an early round. Because I think that's what happens often in the early rounds is like you get the pairing of the janky homebrew deck that's maybe not what you tuned your deck for, especially at like a Calling Plus event where you're like, okay, I'm going in expecting the meta, and then I face some jank and I end up losing in an early round, and now I'm just in that uphill battle the whole rest of the tournament.
Yeah. That situation actually happened to me at our local 1K for Project Player at Grave Troll. And round 1, I pair into Combo Bolton, and I'm on Riptide because I have a brand to keep. And I'm like, well, this matchup's normally very good for me. I'm not super worried about it as long as he doesn't combo. And he goes to combo, and it's the only turn of the game I haven't drawn a trap. So I just take like 95 damage straight to the dome, and I'm like, okay, well, that sucks. And then from there, it was just losing round 1, and he didn't win another game after that. So I was just kind of like... I guess.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it's also you playing an anti-meta deck, right? So, like, you got a little bit
exactly.
by anti-meta facing anti-meta.
Yeah.
I don't know if you consider the Bolton deck anti-meta, but it's definitely anti-establishment.
I consider Bolton to be in a meta of his own.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Anybody who wants to bring Bolton to their event, God bless you. you know?
Yeah.
It's just...
So did you maybe this is an interesting segue. What do you think about like when a content creator does well with a deck? To me, whenever a content creator does well with a deck, I assume that if I play against a random person at my local event, even like battle hardened, I guess those don't exist anymore, but tier 2 and lower level events, I just assume that my opponent is playing pretty close to the net deck of whatever content creator just published their list.
So what's the question here? Is the question,
Do you
do
think
I
that's
think
like
this is a
valid, or do you
thing?
think I'm misplaced in this? Like, if someone shows up on Bolton nowadays, I just assume they're playing something close to what Josh Lau played because like he published the video, he went through like the complex guide. I assume they're not going to just be playing some like regular normal Bolton deck.
Yeah, for the most part. I generally assume that anybody playing Bolton is of one of two schools of thought. It's whatever Josh Lau is playing, or there's like another guy who only plays Bolton. His name's like Alex Tyler, I think, and he just has been on Bolton since the hero came out and just doesn't play anything else. So I think for the most part, those are the only two people who put out any real sort of tech on Bolton, unless Ellie Bird is feeling froggy and just decides to go into the Bolton tank again and then goes, okay, never mind. But yeah, I always assume that it's probably whatever Josh put out for the most part. I think he has the biggest pull in the room as far as warrior decks go. He is the
I would say
warrior guy.
the same thing. I didn't want to silo in on just Bolton too. I meant more like as a general statement. Like for example, Teklo Foundry puts out a video about the Jarl deck he played at the Pro Tour. I watched that video. I assume that I face a random Jarl at my local, someone who's not like a Jarl truther, like not someone who's been playing Jarl for a year, but like someone who, okay, now they're playing Jarl. I just assume it's going to be like the straight net deck or the Pleiades. When the Pleiades deck popped off at that tournament and put two people in top 8, I assume every Pleiades, they're not going to be actually playing Suspensors, ticking them down and throwing big attacks, right? They're going to be just doing putting all their cards sideways as efficiently as possible. Has this held true for you, or?
I think a lot of it just comes down to like the culture of Fab players in general. A lot of Fab players will just play whatever they think is the most competitive deck or the best deck. But there's the other paradigm to the Fab culture that is people love their heroes. So when their hero isn't good or they weren't the ones to figure out the deck list or couldn't solve how to play the hero in the current format and somebody else does and they go, oh my god, my hero's playable now. I really wanted to play this hero, so now I'm going to play this. Like, we see this kind of phenomenon with... I don't know if you played against the gentleman who was playing Tough Nut at Project Player this weekend. But they're on that, like, go again list that... I can't remember his name, but he won his PQ. He's the only person with, like, Tough Nut LL points, essentially. And he put out a deck tech on that. And it was pretty much all the go again, Buck Wilds, Wild Rides, all that style of Tough Nut. And then same thing with Lyeth. Like when Lyeth was doing well, people were like, oh my god, let me build that deck. Like Jason, I think is his name locally, who shows up with Lyeth, and then you played Lyeth for a little while afterwards. And I just think it's more of a hero-centric, like, love thing. Like whenever I see a Riptide list do well, I'll go sleeve it up and try it.
Okay, so you in your own life can co-sign what I'm saying then, in that
Correct.
like you see someone do well, that kind of validates that, okay, maybe the hero has a place, let me see what they're cooking with, and I'm going to play it. So even more so than what I was saying of I'm going to pick up Jarl despite never playing it before, but you're saying it's actually like I've always loved Jarl but never found the list, or I've tried my own list and they didn't work, and I'm going to now take what someone else had success on.
Correct. Yeah. So that's actually how I started on Riptide, believe it or not. I wasn't having success brewing the hero. I knew immediately when the hero got spoiled, that was the hero I wanted to play. I didn't care about anything else. Assassin, get out of here. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, ninja, whatever, old news. And give me this big, green, chunky trap ranger, and then let me have fun. And then there was a guy out in Brazil, I think his name is Leo, if I remember correctly, and he put out kind of the original, like, sort of aggro Dreadbore style Riptide deck. And I took that to the calling in Baltimore, and I made day 2 on it. And then there was one other Riptide in the room, and we got paired into each other like round 6, maybe round 7. And we looked at each other, we were just like, this is awkward, because we both know we have Dreadbore, and the traps are going to be useless.
Yeah.
And it's like a nightmare. But yeah, I would not have done as well building a Riptide deck by myself if it wasn't for Leo. Now, granted, I didn't play like his exact list because I jammed a bunch of reps on Talishar. I made my own changes. I said, I don't really like this card. I want to do this instead. I think this is better for the meta. Like, more frailty, more inertia, this kind of thing. Because like Iyslander was still floating around, and inertia was like crazy good into Iyslander.
I think this is just a good rule in general for people trying to prepare for a tournament of any scale. Is like knowing if it's a local tournament, knowing the attitudes of the people in your area to see are they those kind of people that fit the mold we're talking about, and if not, just kind of perusing the general landscape of Flesh and Blood topping deck lists at events, as well as people who didn't necessarily get top 8 but they're known content creators and put out stuff. I think it's just like an interesting way to get a little bit of edge where they don't necessarily know your deck if you're playing one of your homebrew decks, whereas you can learn a lot about theirs just from what's publicly available online.
It's interesting too because you talk about kind of sussing out the vibes from like your locals and people you run into, and the story that pops into my head is when you and I were playing one week and I was sideboarding and I was like, and I took out a single card, and I made sure you saw me take out a single card and set it aside. And then later in the game, I resolved take the bait, and you just like looked super confused because you're like, wait, I thought he took that out. Mm-hmm. Because you and I have played enough where you pretty much know my list at this point. So I'm wondering, do you do any sort of cheeky, like, at the table shenanigans when you know the person across from you? Like, say you paired into one of your teammates and you know that they know your list?
So, actually, I'm glad you bring this up. Whenever I try to sideboard, and I can tell my opponent is, like, not just in the tank on how to sideboard themselves, but they're, like, participating in the pre-match match. I try to, like, put my deck box in the middle. I have, like, one of those, like, double deck boxes with, like, the big foldy thing over it. So I try to put it there, and then when I'm sideboarding, I have like all my cards behind, so my opponent can't see like, oh, okay, they took out like 3 cards and they put them in. I have some extra sleeves just in case my like sleeves rip, so I have some extra sleeves in my deck box, so my opponent can't see that like it's not for this purpose, but it's a double benefit where since I have sleeves in there, my opponent can't be like, oh, they took out like 2 cards and they're playing like 67 cards, because there's like we're playing a game in person at a table. When you're on Talishar, you click the cards and then both people's decks get submitted at the exact same time. That's just like not how it works in paper, right? You have that 5-minute preamble where both players are siding, and you can see like your opponent's face as they're sideboarding and stuff, right? I'm never going to be like, okay, I'm going to sit here and wait for them to start shuffling and then sideboard like as fast as possible in that 20 seconds left or whatever. But there's definitely, you can tell if your opponent just picks up their fat brick of cards and starts shuffling and they did not take anything out. You're like, okay, I know this is going to be the Giga Fatigue matchup. I think this is like most evident now if you play against like a warrior. You play against a warrior and they just like, you see them shuffling this gigantic brick. They didn't take out any cards. Like, all right, there could be a great axe in my future. So I would say I don't necessarily do this by like someone that I know and I try to like be cheeky about it, but I just try to not give away any information about what I'm going to be doing in the match before the match whenever possible. Obviously, I like locals and stuff. I'm joking around. I'm not taking it super try-hard mode, but it's something I've been trying to improve for like calling plus events where I know I've definitely been lazy before and just like thrown a couple cards in my playmat as I'm like fanning through my deck. I grab a card, I throw it, I throw it, and then I pick up that stack of cards and put it in my deck box, and that's just like, it's giving a lot of information to my opponent of how I intend to play the match just by like how I'm sideboarding. I think
there's a lot of like little weird things at the table that I feel a lot of people don't really pick up on. Now, my whole big thing is like cards that are curling / slightly curled, and there's like a weird player psychology that I kind of hone in on sometimes, where if my opponent has showed me like a bunch of foil cards, but then like, and they're all kind of basically bent in the same way, and then there's like one card that's looking a little flatter than most, and my brain kind of fires off and goes, out of this whole deck, what card would you not get foiled if all of these cards were foiled? And then it kind of hits me, it's like, oh, the foils of this card might have been too expensive because the deck like picked up in hype or whatever, so I can reasonably assume that it's like this card. And it's just one of those things where there's a lot of information at the table if you're willing to look for it, and it's not like enough where if you call the judge, it would be like, oh, this is like a marked card error or something like that. It's just like the slight difference that you get between like double sleeving your cards and not double sleeving your cards. I don't know if you've ever compared the two like side by side, but they're pretty drastic in difference, and the double sleeve cards will tend to be a lot more flat, but even the foils will still kind of like raise up just a little bit. And a lot of times when people put cards down in their arsenal, they don't put anything like on top of them. Some players do, but most people don't, and you can just kind of see the card go right. Yeah, you're just like, oh, okay. So most of the deck's been non-foil. This card's foil. I wonder what it could be, kind of deal.
Yeah, I would say I'm not good enough to notice this type of stuff often, but there are definitely some times when it's noticeable. I would say I only really pick up on it when it's like so bad that a judge should look at their deck. When it's like, yeah, they've snuck a card in their deck. It's not a Flesh and Blood card. It's actually a Pringle.
For me, it's I kind of just notice these little oddities, but that's just how my brain locks into stuff. You know, like I'll notice when someone pitches something upside down kind of thing, even if it's on accident. I'll be like, hey, can you get that one?
Yeah.
Just this weekend, even a Project Player, there was a incident where I was losing this game. It didn't matter. I just wanted it to be resolved correctly. And my gravy opponent accidentally like put his second copy of Murderous Rabble back in the deck at some point instead of to the graveyard. The deck got shuffled somewhere. The final turn of the game, he has both Murderous Rabbles, both the second one and the third one, but he's already cast the second one, so he's one extra Rabble in hand. And I'm just like, what? Why do you have two in your hand? Where you've attacked me with this? The first one flipped a yellow. The second one came in for 3. I blocked both of them to deny you gold. Where did this come from? And we had to like backtrack the whole game essentially and figure out where it went. It ended up just being downgraded as like a hidden card error. He like discarded the card, played the rest of the thing. I still lost. It didn't matter. But it's just those types of things. I go, wait a minute. Something don't feel right. All the alarm bells in my head are going off.
Yeah, it's definitely good to make sure that. I would say that that's something that requires you to be competent with your own deck when you're entering a tournament, so that you can pay attention to what's going on your opponent's side. If you know what you're doing, then you can. Because a lot of times this type of stuff isn't even malicious. Like they just actually, they dexterity issued IRL, and somehow a card ended up in a wrong location. I would say almost every tournament that I've played in, there's been at least one of these incidents by one of my opponents where they draw 5 cards, they knock a card off the top of their deck, they make some sort of agility check fail, and we have to repair it in something. So I would say, yeah, if you're like someone watching this who's either had this happen to you, know that it happens to at least one of my opponents in every tournament. And then if you're the opponent of them, it's sort of on you to make sure, because maybe your opponent is like scared to call a judge, thinking, oh, I'm going to get like DQ'd from the tournament. Like they don't know what the penalties are for this. So I think if you're an attentive opponent, you can make sure that the game is played out how it's supposed to be. And then if it does happen to you, then you can try to figure out how to resolve it as amicably as possible, given that you're showing to your opponent, like you said, you rewound the whole game. You're like able to be focused enough on the game that you can actually get back to the point where the issue could be fixed.
We've kind of rambled about tournament procedure, different types of things like tabletop etiquette, things we do to, cheese our friends from time to time.
Yeah.
But we have seen some pretty interesting spoilers over the last couple of days, specifically today. And there's one in particular that I feel like we should talk about because everybody's probably talking about this. And depending on what demographic you fall in, you're either really excited or you might be considering your time in Flesh and Blood being over.
Okay. Is that extreme, you think?
Oh, yeah. I have seen some chatter online already about people saying they're going to take a break from the game over this card.
Okay. You're a professional. You like pull the cards on the screen and stuff? Look at this.
Yeah. Right here.
So legit. All right. You want me to read it, or you want to read it?
Yeah, you're the professional reader, as
I am the professional reader.
Self-proclaimed on the Rantaways podcast.
Other people have bestowed this title on me. I wouldn't consider it self-proclaimed. But I haven't denied them, so maybe I was say I'm a good reader. All right, let's go. We have Lightning Runeblade Action Attack. So firstly, before I get into the actual card, I think it's interesting how they're printing so many Lightning cards for the purposes of LL. Not that LL is that important, but like they're just printing a crazy amount of Lightning cards, which they've never really done before, given that like Lightning is something that matters for a lot of cards. Okay, so I'll get into the thing. We can talk more about that after. But Tempestuous Kiss, 2-cost, red, Lightning Runeblade Action Attack. Attacks for 5 and defends for 3. But it has an ability Quick Strike. If this has Go Again, it gets +1 attack. And when this attacks a hero, deal 1 arcane damage to them. The first time this deals damage to a hero, they discard a card. The first thing is that, yeah, this whole Quick Strike mechanic is interesting because it reads like one sentence, but I would say it's actually like two different things, because if it has Go Again, it gets +1. But that's not a trigger when it attacks. So like if you somehow give this Go Again in the middle of the chain link, like in the defend step or in the reaction step, then it'll get that +1. But the trigger of when this attacks a hero, deal 1 arcane, is only when it attacks if it has Go Again. Are you reading this the same way I am?
Yes.
So that's kind of like a weird...
Yeah, the first part reads as like a continuous static, right? The whole ability kind of is like a continuous static, but the second line of the text won't matter if you've moved past the step in which it's relevant.
Yeah.
So I do actually really like templating like this from a gameplay standpoint, because it lets you be kind of tricky with certain things. You know, like if I lead with this and I don't have Go Again, and then what do you do as the opponent? Do you expect me to give it Go Again? Do you put the 2 cards in front to expect the extra +1? Do you try to put a card and like a 2-block piece of armor in front to be efficient? I really like things like this in the game. It allows you to kind of play your opponent a little more at the table.
Yeah, also, it says the first time this deals damage. We don't really have many effects. I don't know if we have any, actually, that you can play in the Aurora deck that give your other cards damage. It would be like Shock Charmers, but Shock Charmers would, this card would already have to do the damage for it to deal extra damage. But there was effects in the past, like Bramble Spark, where it gave the...
Sting of Sorcery would do it.
Sting of Sorcery is legal? Okay, so you could play Sting of Sorcery. That's a when it attacks trigger?
Yeah, it gives the attack the arcane damage.
Yeah, so that would work with this to make them discard a card if that arcane went through.
Yep.
Because the first thing I think of when I see this is like, let's assume it doesn't have Go Again. I'm playing a 2 for 5 on hit discard. Is that a card that I want to put in my deck? There's a lot of Runeblade cards that fulfill some condition if you do the opponent discards. And notably, this is kind of a bad chain ender, because if you've done any arcane earlier, then your opponent may have floating to pay for it. They can block with the last 2 cards in their hand. But all that being said, the card is just like insanely powerful. If you're in a vacuum able to use that one resource on something else, you're able to fulfill Quick Strike, and your opponent is not a deck of having floating resources where they can freely AB the ping. So I would say this is like a signpost card for Aurora, and you're going to want to be able to fulfill this condition, as well as have enough other cards in your deck that support this to where you can have a turn that forces your opponent to be defensive while you're also chipping in damage. That's my first impressions, at least. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said. We've kind of discussed offline about some things. I really think that a card like Staunch Response is a really good answer to this. It's like very clean on a blue. It's just a 2-card answer to this card. And if they're pitching for this, it's like, oh, my 2 cards will block your 2 cards, kind of thing. But the one thing I do really like about this is almost like Blossoming Spellblade, but fixed. Right, so Blossoming Spellblade had very similar text where in the event of damage, it would get a non-attack out of your graveyard, and you could play it as an instant. But only if you fused.
And it had a higher ceiling, right? Where it's like every time it does damage, you get non-attacks, or no?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
But what I mean by fixing Blossoming Spellblade is you don't need it to do it every time. You just need it to do it the one time kind of thing. And this is a much easier condition to fill.
Yep.
And when we look at it from like a implied value standpoint, we at base with no Go Again, this is a 2-card 8 presenting, right? So 5 damage discard a card makes the 2-card 8. Like, if opponent does nothing, we have that. But if they give us 2 cards and block it, it's a 2-card 6.
I don't think you can just give it an extra point because
I'm just talking about the implied value, right? So, like, if you give me 2 cards in a vacuum, 2 cards is 3 block, right?
Oh, sure. I just meant 5 in that, like, when you play a Lightning Rune Blade like this, where you don't have a real weapon, I think assigning point values of, like, it's a 2-card 6 because, like, you're trading 2 cards for their 2 cards isn't necessarily true because unless I'm missing something, there's not a recursive loop and your weapon requires you to have lightning attacks. So I think because this actually only does 5 damage, if I put a 3 block plus a 2 block armor and cover up the effect when it's not quick striking, I think that's like a real deal that I'm saving 1 HP because a card like this is something that isn't necessarily strong into a deck that's wanting to be defensive.
Sure. I'm just merely talking about the perceived value of the card.
Right.
This is one of the argument points that people are having in various Discords right now of, oh, this card's a 2-card 10. And it's like, well, no. It's like saying Rosetta Thorn is a 1-card 4 or whatever, or a no-card 4, whatever have you. But there's other cards you need to play in order to turn on these effects.
I would say if we look at some of the design of the cards that make lightning flows currently, and the fact that your hero has to use 2 resources to make a lightning flow, which means you need a tune a counter, you need some other means of getting resources to cleanly play this after using your hero ability. There's going to be a real investment cost of creating the quick strike ability on this. So if me as the Aurora player is spending, let's say I spend like half a card's worth on making the embodiment, and then now I'm casting this card, and it takes 3 cards out of my opponent. They have to AB, they give 2 cards on defense. I'm only really up like half a card. It's pretty nebulous, but you know what I mean? It's like I'm not actually up that fat, and that's a play where it's pretty situational given that I have to play blues in a deck that maybe doesn't want to be playing lots of blues, and I've kept my full hand on the turn prior, and it's not like I'm achieving real damage. Like I said, whenever I look at a hero that has a weapon that doesn't meaningfully do damage and isn't infinitely able to swing, it has like a condition to swing, and they banned Reaping Blade, so we're not going to be able to play Reaping Blade in this deck.
So
I would say
Scythe.
Well, I think the Reaping Blade is just what makes this card much more appealing, right? Where you can go like Mauve Skies, attack with this, swing the Reaping Blade after seems like really strong. But the fact that, you have to play something like Dread Scythe, and then now you need a whole nother blue in your hand, or if you play the, whatever her weapon's called, like Conduit something, right? Cosmic. No, Scorpio Comet Tail. Yeah, that's the one. If you're playing that weapon after this, your opponent is also like benefiting in some way too. Of if they AB'd on the Kiss, now they can AB on like the Scorpio ping. You're not actually like achieving that much damage.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is going to be one of the best Arc Lightning starters, though, on that turn.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, starting with this card is going to be brutal for the opponent because now they have to block up front. And if this ends up being a deck that plays some generic on-hit effects, like maybe you're able to attack with Lightning Form at the end, and then now you remake the embodiment, and then you have a good turn on the next turn, or you're able to play Snatch, these types of cards. I think forcing your opponent to block up front with this Kiss as Chainlink 1 is definitely strong. Isn't every card with Kiss in it just good, actually, now that I'm thinking about it?
I think every card that implies this act is pretty good, and or requires the opponent to discard cards.
Yeah.
That is the tax for romance. You discard your hand.
Yeah. You pay all that money for the ring, you know?
Yep, exactly.
And the reason I was being, I think, slightly negative about that card is just because of the fact it's obviously so good. Like, anyone can see that the card is
strong.
good, but
the card is strong. Like, there's no denying the card is very good, but there's so much dooming on the internet right now, and it's one of those things where I don't even think, like, this is the card you're going to want to be dooming over, to be honest with you. I think there are going to be more cards in the set that are going to push your salt meter, through the roof a little bit. I think this card is fine. I think it's strong. Aurora needs some strong cards because half her card pool got cut.
Yeah, I would say one thing that's maybe a bit scary is if they decide to print Amp within the Lightning Runeblade card pool. We already have a couple instances of amp in the generic lightning card pool, but if you start amping to where the opponent has no agency, like most of the time into Runeblades, you're not playing more AB outside of the fringe use case of against the Millennium Tree of Florian, where sometimes people would play AB3 or AB4. Having to play more than one AB against this Aurora deck, just in case they run amp and they can amp these when this attacks deal one arcane effects. I think that would definitely make this a lot stronger if the arcane ping was for like 3 or 4 instead, and the opponent was just kind of out of luck.
Yeah, you could kind of see that if like Living Legend ever came back with a vengeance and was a tournament format. Imagine Briar playing like Channel of the Millennium Tree and then giving this go again and then playing it and just be like, I don't know, man. Do you have AB3? Well, no, of course I don't.
Yeah, AB4, right? You need,
yeah, exactly.
It's mean.
So the other card that I wanted to talk about is actually for Ocilio. And you can probably guess which one it is, but...
Echo Flash.
Yep.
Let's go.
And you, as the designated reader.
Sure. I'll go ahead. So Echo Flash. I think the name, by the way, is like an ode to Flash, given that it's a card. When you see the text, will make sense. 2 cost, Lightning Wizard instant. By 2 cost, I mean it costs 1. Of course, I would never misread something. 1 cost. I was looking at the 2 pips in the top left of it being a yellow, and I got bamboozled. Okay, 1 cost. It pitches for 2 if you were to pitch it. That's where the 2 comes from. Echo Flash. Deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. When this is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you open your binder mid-match, put in the graveyard, boom. Your hero deals 1 arcane damage to target hero. The first thing that I think is cool is that if you're playing this in the new Ocilio, which this cover art is indicating in the Brocilio, Swolcilio, whatever, when you discard it to the hero power, you deal an arcane, and then since it's an instant, you can play it from the graveyard. It goes back to the board, and then it goes back to the graveyard, and it deals another arcane. So you're kind of, in essence, doing 1 card, 3 arcane. So you've achieved zap at instant speed.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, the more powerful thing is that you've achieved zap at instant speed. That's also a lightning card. That's also a yellow in a deck that may function off of yellows if you're playing, some like 2 1-cost cards in a given turn. And it also functions in the old Ocilio where you can discard it to the hero power and actually deal an arcane. I know, like, way back in the day, people were messing around with, like, Count Your Blessings and stuff of, like, ways of discarding to the hero power and actually achieving value out of the discard as opposed to just digging for Gone in a Flash or more combo pieces. So I think, yeah, this probably finds a spot in both the new and old Ocilio.
Yeah, I really like the design templating of the new Ocilio. Whatever you call them, Burcilio, Swolcilio, whatever your flavor. I think it is hard to deny that this hero is really cool. And you haven't played any Magic, correct, Noah?
No, but Flash is like the keyword of Magic, right? Where you get to play from the graveyard.
Well, Flash is you may play this at instant speed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The cards you get to play from graveyard, there's a couple of different keywords, but the one that pops into my head is Madness. So Madness is an alternate casting cost that you can only really use if you've discarded the card. So if something has like Madness, if something has Madness 0 and you discard it, you then get to cast it for 0.
They should have named it Echo Madness then.
Well, this is an instant.
Oh, Echo Flash Madness. I see.
So I do really like that design space. I think Fab would, having a cool like Madness style deck running around would put a lot of the old MTG heads like me and give them something new to play with. And then could you imagine if we had Old Volzar and this card? It just
and Channel Lightning Valley. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
it would be obscene.
I'll play it, go to graveyard, and I'll discard one off my Ocilio power and play another one. It's just like, all right, man. That's just like twice as many lightning cards for the amp. I personally think that Nationals is going to be taken over by Ziggy because that's like the most popular hero at the moment as far as people brewing. But I think Pro Tour is going to be dominated by this guy.
Okay, so you think everyone's going to just like throw Mario to the curb? No more Victor. I don't want to play with the horse.
Well, Victor's going to throw himself to the curb. He's right there. He's on his way to the glue factory, man. That horse is not long for this world.
But do we have enough events where you can actually LL before Pro Tour?
That is a good question. Let's find out, shall we?
'Cause I think it's just callings. Like you have to actually winning callings is hard. I mean, Victor won the calling this past weekend, but in general, winning callings is hard. I think usually
Yeah.
decks like Victor and KO would like farm up points on the ProQuest and RTN season.
Well, yeah, but you have to think that like Nationals is just a huge injector of LL points, and some of the smaller Nationals have like a pretty high chance of being won by some of these like off meta or less favored heroes,
Makes sense.
right? So a deck like Victor in a room full of people just playing what they want to play is probably a pretty good shot, because that deck is very powerful if you don't have a plan, and even if you do have a plan, sometimes it just goes awry. And they went, "I am mightier than God. Figure out how to beat my hammer for 35."
Yeah, that is quite mighty. Not many are mightier than that.
So let's see here. We're in skirmish season right now. You have calling Jakarta, calling Sao Paulo, Omens World Premiere, calling Auckland, then US Nat. The rest of the national championships going into calling Shinjuku, and then finally Pro Tour Vegas.
So yeah, it's really just the national season for the cleaning house of decks, I guess.
Yeah. Now the callings will most likely give points to the known contenders of like Mario Acilio, and then if there's any more Filippos out there in the world that are going to ride the horse to victory. But Nationals is where I would expect the victor to pick up the majority of his points, just because a lot of the national events that are not the US or the UK or Canada or whatever are typically a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And anything can happen at those events.
Yeah, facts.
Well, so what does the future hold for you, Mr. Beygelman?
Well, I'm going to be playing in those tournaments, like you said. I'm going to be playing in Nationals, Pro Tour. I'm hoping that, unironically, there's a spark for me in these Lightning Heroes. And I'm impassioned to start brewing a new deck. I've really not felt that like excitement of, oh wow, there's something new, I can't wait to brew it. I kind of just like, I think the last one was High Seas release, because like when Super Slam came out, I was like, yeah, I'm just not really interested in any of these new heroes. I'm just going to brew old KO with these new cards. And High Seas with Gravy Bones was interesting, but like I hate when I have to fight against my own deck to be able to play the game. I like fighting against my opponent's deck and engaging in a back and forth, as opposed to just, if I can play, I win. If I can't play, I lose. It's just not a fun gameplay loop for me. So I think, if the stuff from Omens is more in line with my deck is a beautiful piano piece, and my opponent tries to counter my strategy that works the same way every single game, and is all the stars, the moon, and the sun are aligned. It's like it's a very cosmically themed set. There's like the concept of syzygy, where like the sun, the moon, and the earth, they're all aligned. I want to have this in my deck where like every hand is just perfect. So if these heroes let me build my deck to do stuff like that, then I'll be having a lot of fun at upcoming tournaments.
All right, well, I think that's going to do it for us here. So do you have any social media plugs, anything you want to do, let the audience at home know where to find you?
Yeah. I mean, I basically never do anything on Twitter. I think my @ is nbagels. If you want to follow me or say something very nice to me, never say anything mean, please.
Oh, it's not Bagels TCG?
No, it's not Bagel TCG, unfortunately. Despite the fact that guy's name is also Noah. And then, you can catch me every Thursday between like 8:30 to 10:30, maybe 11:30. Just basically Thursday evening, night, Eastern time. I stream with Josh over on the Runaways main channel. And then every Thursday, I'm also on the Runaways podcast with Cody, Lucas, Dan if he's around, sometimes special guests.
Most recent special guest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out, congratulations to Dan. All right, everybody, if you've stayed this long, please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.